I'm Bill McKibben. I'm a scholar in residence at Middlebury College in Middlebury, Vermont, and a writer and activist around climate issues in particular. I wrote the first book about global warming back in 1989, a book called The End of Nature. And ever since, I've mostly been trying to deal with different strands of that biggest of all problems. How it is that our culture has kept us from reacting, what we need to understand about how population affects the changes we're going to have to make, on and on and on. I think it's by far the biggest story of our time, this question of whether human beings are going to be able to grapple with the impact we've made on the planet or not. And I think it's the most interesting story of our time too, which is why I guess I've spent most of my life working on it. Well, I grew up all over, but my high school years were spent outside Boston in Lexington, birthplace of American liberty. I spent my summers giving tours on Lexington Green, wearing my tricorn hat, which may explain, I sort of came by my, slightly radical politics honestly. If you tell that story enough times about people willing to lay their lives on the line for what they believed, then it becomes a little easier to challenge the status quo sometimes. Polls show more than 70% of Americans understand that global warming is real and a serious problem and that the government should do something. It's very hard not to know that, especially if you live, someplace like New England where we tend to pay attention to the weather. Winter is 3 weeks shorter now than it was 30 years ago. Everybody can feel the difference. Where I live up in northern New England, we one of our winter recreations is everybody in town taking bets on when the ice will go out on the ponds. The local Rotary Club or whatever will put a outhouse or something out on the lake, and people will take chances on when it'll fall through. We have good records about when ice goes out in lakes from those contests for the last 200 years. It's a completely different world, The ponds have melted 3 and 4 weeks earlier than they used to. Things are changing so fast, and it's finally waking people up to take action. The future for skiing in New England, I'm afraid, looks bleak. I mean, this is my greatest of all vices, is cross-country skiing. And 2 or 3 years ago, the University of New Hampshire published the first sort of really comprehensive regional look at what climate change was doing. And in the back of that report was a sentence that made me almost cry. They said, by the middle of the century, snowmobiling and cross-country skiing will be extinct in New England. I can ski out my back door and through the woods, and in a little while hit the groomed trails from Middlebury College and ski on those, and then ski on the Catamount Trail that runs north to south through Vermont, and then onto the snowmobile trails, the vast trails in Vermont, and it's all good. Winter has been one of the defining characteristics of New England for as long as human beings have lived here, the thousands of years that we've been here. And we may be, if we're not really good about taking big steps soon, we may be the last generations that have any sense of what a New England winter was like. On the other hand, in the last couple of years, there's finally begun to be the movement of people to demand some political change. That really started in New England. We did this march across Vermont in the summer of '06, which was the first large-scale climate demonstration the country had seen. It's been followed by big marches across Massachusetts, across New Hampshire, by religious people, by student groups. It's been followed by the intense participation of New Englanders more than any region in the country in these Step It Up demonstrations that we've been running to demand climate action. There were a number of people in this country who, in the last 20 years, decided that their view of the world was that markets would solve all problems. And so if the market wasn't solving global warming, the logical explanation must be that global warming wasn't a problem. If markets couldn't. That's A, obvious logical fallacy, and B, a great shame, because we need markets involved in solving this problem. We needed all the kind of entrepreneurial creativity that we can muster to solve this problem. Massachusetts is doing a good job of positioning itself as a real leader in the post-fossil fuel economy. And the great symbol of that is going to be those beautiful wind turbines going in off the Cape. 20 years from now, they'll be on every postcard that people have about Cape Cod. They'll be one of the memories that people cherish from their vacations there. We need a whole new aesthetic, and we need it first in places like Cape Cod that aren't going to be there in 100 years unless we're able to solve this problem. Dealing with global warming really is unlike other social movements. The civil rights movement was hard work. Everybody knew who was in it, had great faith that in the long run it was going to win. And of course it did. Global warming's a little different. We've got to not only win, we've got to win quickly enough to make a difference. It's very good to change the light bulb on your kitchen table, above your kitchen table. Put in that compact fluorescent. But even as you're doing it, a small voice in your head will be saying, somehow this seems unlikely to actually stop global warming. That voice is correct. The only thing that's going to stop global warming is political organizing. So screw in that new light bulb and then go to work to screw in a new federal policy about how we use energy. I'm very proud to be associated with Middlebury College, which has emerged as really the epicenter of the climate change movement in an awful lot of ways. The most active campus in the country with the most enlightened college leadership in the country. It's great fun to be there right now. It's an exciting place.